This is a really interesting code kata question where I have to write a JavaScript rendering framework from scratch. I didn't really know what I was getting into, but once I saw the reality of the question, it got really interesting. I want to do something that people can use in their day-to-day. Something like this might be relevant. Interesting. So this is to create a React function. This looks like React.createElementDiv or something like this. You want to create an object with methods for various HTML elements. Dude, this is easy. Here, watch. Format equals object div is a function that returns the value. And why do I want this? Oh, you want to be able to do this stuff. Okay, here we go. We're getting something cool. Yeah, let's figure this out. Okay, so the h1 function will also do that. But how, when you call the div function, does it call the h1? We need a custom way of getting figuring out what a property of an object is called. And there's a way to do that, but I don't know what it is. How to find out when object property called. I feel like I'm not getting anything good from Google searches here, or at least DuckDuckGo searches. I want to know. How do you do this? This looks really interesting. This is a good challenge. Okay, let's make our h1 function. Okay, so we got to be able to do this. So when div is dotted, we somehow are able to combine the functions of div and h1. There's a way to do this. I know there's a way to do this. You do format and you do a custom getter on it. And so when you put this dot, anything after it is technically a string, even other dots. This is all a giant string. And then format can go split on the dot and then can reduce them or pipe them. How do you do that? Is it like getters and setters? Is that what this is? Getters, setters, JavaScript. Maybe they give us a little bit of code here somewhere. They don't. Solutions. I don't want to see solutions. I don't want to see anything like that. I just want to see the one thing that I'm looking for. Okay, I'm gonna hang on. Ooh. How do I upload a solution? Oh, is it train on this challenge? Yeah, what's the code they give me? I would not write it like this. Oh, I guess you can create a function that generates this for you. But that's still not what first I gotta solve this, and then I can clean it up in a bit. Because yeah, I could take a tags array and deal with it. This is really cool. We can use this to verify when we're done. I still need to figure out how to do it. I'm pretty sure it's something like this. It's basically like when you put the dot, whatever comes after it, you can be the person to define what that means. So this says latest, get latest to do this. So if you call dot latest, it does that. So that's a getter setter. And look, this is not a class. Interesting. That calls this function. So what if the getter was not latest, but could be anything of these tags, right? Any of them could be a getter. Can I dynamically create these? Oh, I'm so confused. Well, we can try a test. We can definitely try a test here. It's getting late. I wonder if I can do this in 15 minutes. Oh, yes, you can. Yes. I'm there. I got it, guys. There we go. Okay, so we got tags, right? We can put them in the object, I guess. I'm just gonna do them here. So we got div, we got h1. We gotta loop these eventually, and I'll deal with that later. And then we can create a getter. This is get div, and it's a function, and we're going to have it take a value and then return. We got to create our generic function now because I don't want to write this multiple times. So we need a function that returns this, and that can be called string formatter. Yay! And it takes multiple things. We could even have it be a function that creates a function, and we just auto return it here. Do we want to do that? Yeah, I would like to do that. So the first thing we would get would be the div part. So it's the HTML element name. And then the next thing, once we return back, we would get the value. Yes, we're doing it. We're doing it, guys. Here we go. Okay, there we go. This is fun. And let's make it a little bit more interesting. Okay, string formatter goes in here. We call div. And this one calls h1. We're not done yet. Now we need to basically say, get rid of that arrow. There we go. We'll generate this in a bit. So you can, because you can do it. That's great. And what we need to do is we need to make it so that if you do .div .something. Okay, I'm not done yet. I want this article back. How do I look at it? This .log.length. How do you, can I get with a getter, can I get the rest of the stuff here? Yes, but what are the arbs that come in? What arbs come into this? Define property O, B, O.b, yes, runs this getter function. Do I need to do it for every possible tag that he gets the finding a getter on existing objects? Yeah, but this looks like it has more functionality. So O is the object, they're adding a property B and they're calling a getter on it. So anytime you do a dot, even if you don't call it as a function, it will, so if you do call it as a function, I think it executes this. Okay, let's mess with it right now. Let's mess with this code. And unlike yesterday, I'm going to remember to create a new task for this. And I'm going to run it in Node because I don't want to deal with that. So this is a HTML field chained HTML formatting. Field chained HTML formatting. Okay, cool. Got that. And we're going to create a new function called field index. I don't care about the index right now. We can create an index, but I don't care about the index. This is going to right now just be we'll just put in the index. Who cares? And down here, we'll just console log. Okay, console log, yeah, that's fine. And we want to log format.div. And we want to call it with a value of hello world. This is how everybody does it. Hello world. And that should give us what we expect. Hello. We need to run the task. Okay, so what is this called again? It was, you know what? Just grab it out of here. It's not observable though, and it's going to try to subscribe to it. Okay, module.exports equals of, no. There, we did it. Yay. We got an observable. Const of require, goodness. Actually, yes. Okay, I got everything. Cool. And I should just copy one of these the Quan way, writing it out. And it's just this. Technically, it's the index file though. So it's just that. Save. This is not working because the formatting is wrong. This needs to return. And this one needs to also return and not have a thing at the end. The real question is why it's not erroring, why nothing's happening. We did an of null. Should have ended. Oh. You know, it'd be fine if we like actually executed the task we're looking for. There we go. Okay, so we got an error. It's saying this get is incorrect here. Do we have to enable getters and setters? Getter must not have any formal parameters. Really? Do you have to get it on this? Is it arguments? What do you do to get the arguments? How do you do this? Okay, you know what? Forget all this. We're going to console log this. So I have no clue what's going on. And this one's going to error too. I can't log this. You can just do that. And then this one's going to error too. So it's erroring on some other stuff. Print in order, tab is blah, 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 not used. We use it in here. Where is it saying? In the index file. Print index. Tap is not used. Okay. Tags assigned a value but never used. Yes, that's correct. And expected to return a value and get fine. Jeez. So like delicate. Okay. So this contains an object with a div and an h1. That is interesting because that is the format object. I'm feeling it. Okay. But I passed in hello world. I'm seeing an output of hello world. Huh? How did this work? I just returned this function and it calls the function. Interesting. So this is the same as saying like div, like this, and saying it's equal to a function. Yeah, it is. And in this case, div is equal to this function. No, I'm still not getting it because if I call div as a function, I thought I'm calling this, but no, because this is a getter, calling .div does not, calling .div calls this function, which returns that. And now when I call it as a function, I'm calling this. So technically it works. Can I call .h1? Is this going to do what I expect? I don't think so. And I think that's going to work. H1 is not a function. Okay, cool. So, okay, we're not done. Okay. It has basically we're calling this with the, we're giving access to this, and then we're popping this on it. So what if this was on our class? Do we want it at the top or the bottom? I think at the bottom here. This is not a class, so it's an object. So we put this string formatter on the object. And if you're just coming into the stream, what we are doing is we have this question here. This question says, I want to be able to call format.div and pass a string into it, and it will render a div with that string in the middle. That's the easy part. The hard part is to be able to do div.h1 and pass it a string, and then it renders with the div HTML, the h1, wrapping that, and then your value. This is where it gets really fun. And so this is some code that I've never written stuff like this before. I'm familiar that it existed, and now we're actually making it work. So this is this .string formatter. And now that it's in here, I don't know if it's going to have this if I do it this way. I know this, but I want to console log of this and see if we get anything out. We did not. It does not have access to this. Therefore, I need to make it a class function. And then you can't do this stuff. Hang on. Do I need this in here? Like, I can call it this.string formatter. I can bind this. Does this have a constructor? I'm really curious if I can do that. Thinking of a few things right now. Does that work? Dude, we're not logging. I know this looks bad. I'm going to get rid of that console log in a second. No, so we still have this. But if I do an equal sign here, this is not a class, so I don't think this will work. No, okay. So the only way to get this to work is to make it a class function. I really don't want to. I was hoping to have it be a nice, clean auto return function. Let me keep thinking again. So the goal here is that you can call this.string formatter and it will return that. And I don't necessarily want access to this, but if you do another dot operation, I don't want to return the string formatter. I want to return this. Okay. Yes, that's correct. How do we know which dot operator they're calling? It doesn't really matter, because if they call .div.h1, it will call this. Let's find out. And get rid of my console log here. This should just do the h1 part. It should not have the div also. If it did, I'd have to think through it. Okay, h1 is not a function. So yeah, because we're not returning this. We're not returning this. And if we did return this, okay, in this case, let's just return this. Yep. We got what I expected. Cool. Okay. So we need to know to return this or the string formatter. And we don't know if it's being called as a function because whatever we return, it does. So we need an object with both this and the string formatter on it. And the string formatter is on this, but it's not on the prototype. So it won't be on this. So the only way to do this is a class function. Man, that sucks. But because they would have to call string formatter if they're doing that. We need to return them a function with this on it. Yeah, but how? Can you make a function have this? Functions can't have this context. What if I do this? So if I do that and they get a function, now it has this, but that's like on the inside of string formatter. It'll have that. Yeah, that's not how it works. I want to know if I should return this or this. And technically, I always want to return both. So let's say we want to return both, okay? So you would do this. This is not going to work, but we would do this and we would do, it doesn't work. When you execute this, essentially, it is a function. Constructor, can I do this? But this is the wrong of this. Oh man, I'm so lost. Okay, I thought you can use something up and give it like this context. I can't think of how to do that right now. So this is all working off of memory. And what I could do is look it up, but I'm trying to solve it without doing that. Constructor, we can call this in the constructor. So if they end up calling like this, then it would call the constructor function. I'm pretty sure, unless you have new, unless this only gets called if you new it up. That might make sense why it didn't work earlier. Dang it. Okay. What if, string formatter has to return a function, right? And that function outputs this stuff. We can't return this. What if this is a function? What if this itself is a function? And all of the functions on this are also available on this. What if, I'm curious if we do this prototype, should log it undefined. This dot photo, can I fake this? Yes. Okay, interesting. So I think what we got to do is add stuff to a prototype. So basically this is a function that we're getting back. So like this, some function. And what we want to do is we want to take this function and change the prototype of it equals this. And then we return some function. Okay, so this is about that. Some function. This is returning us a function. And we are adding to the prototype of the function. And it is not working. h1 is not a function. Yes, it is. Let's see. Format.div.h1 is not a function. There's still something I'm missing. There is a way to do a getter where once you've typed like a dot, everything after it is up for grabs. But I think that only works. Yeah, look at this. Div.h1 is not a function. But if .div does return a string, something, if it returns a this, then it would do .h1 and then it could work. No, it's not right then. Is it saying like the h1 is not a function? That's what I really want to know here. What's going on? What is it not able to call? So we're logging some function here. It says it's a function with a prototype that has these methods on it. And that means it should have access to these values. I know what we do. Let's not call it. Let's just log what it is. I'll just make another one here. I want to log what we have here at this point. Undefined. Okay. This y. So the first log is this one, where we're logging it, and then we're getting that exact thing right here. So if we call this with hi, we should get a div with hi. Yes. Do I have to do this? Yeah. How can I avoid doing it on the prototype? Do I do this? There's some way to do this correctly. Okay, I think this is how you do it. Yep. Okay, we did it. I thought you're not supposed to use proto. I really thought you're not supposed to use this. Okay, so we still have some issues. Is that I need to return, I need to turn some function passed with the value that we got, or passed with this function to wrap this function. So I was right to return a function that returns a function. But now when h1 executes, it has to have the previous one's function wrapping it. So we're not done yet. And this is not going to be some function. This is going to be a return function. Let's think through this. So our return function is the string formatter function. But if it doesn't get called and they call a method, now they call to this. But I need to now wrap it. So we need to create a custom this that has all the methods of this. It has all these methods. But it also wraps each one of the methods in a function. I don't know if that's how we're supposed to do it, but we could do that. Is this working? Wow, that's so cool. I don't even use TypeScript. That's so cool. So it knows what the this context is without me having to log it. That's wild. Okay. Okay, so how do we create a custom one? I don't think you can do this. I think you have to do, I have no clue. We're gonna do some logging. So I can figure out what this is, but I don't know where these are on. I don't understand these getters enough. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this dot prototype, and we're gonna do this dot proto. Because I want to get those values and be able to dot them into the next one, and then wrap them all. Okay, so the first one logs, and it is this. The prototype is nothing, and then the proto is. So this has all the stuff on it. Yeah, there's got to be a way to assign object properties to a function without having to use proto, and I think you just assign them to the function itself. You can assign like dot something on a function. Let me see what's over here. Proto deprecated. Yeah, no longer recommended. Okay, what's my alternative? Using Object.create with the desired prototype. Okay, interesting. Oh, I don't need a prototype of it. I actually need it to be assigned. Getter, setter function. So do I need this? Do I need to call Object.create, or can I just be like that? That won't work. It has to be a string. So if you're new to the stream, again, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get a formatter to do something like this, where if you do format div and then .h1 and then pass it a value, it actually does this output. And this is going to be pretty intense. And so I'm going to genericize all this stuff in a bit, but I'm still trying to figure out how to do it in a way that it doesn't error. Is this because of multi-line? Yeah, it's fine. It's like, I can get rid of that rule. What happened? What did it work? Did it error? So this worked before, I thought. If I did underscore, yeah. Okay, so this doesn't work, but if we do Object.create, I'm assuming we can use this. So we would man, I have no clue. It's definitely challenging. So when you create an object, how do you even do that? You pass in an object, which is this, or the return function. How do you set the prototype? This is the proto? This is the proto of the object we're creating. So these are the properties on the object, which would be this. Maybe we can do the dot this on this thing. I'm wondering if that'll work. The object itself is that, and then I can add stuff to it, but I want to add it to the prototype of it. Let's just do this. Let's do this. Something like this, and then we'll do this, like that. So we don't have to do that. No, this is not how you do it. So we create a function, that on it, that becomes a function, and we output it, and it should have the right prototype. Did we do this in the wrong order? I don't think so. I want all the stuff off of this. Technically, the prototype is, we want it to be this, but we want to change the prototype of an object is by nature of how modern. Okay, yes, a very slow operation in every browser. Okay, I don't really care about speed right now, but may extend to any code, blah, blah, blah. Okay, if you care about performance, you should avoid setting it. Instead, create a new object with the desired prototype using this. So if I create an object with this, it has that prototype, but literally it would just be this. It would be, I'd create a new object with everything on this, but not the current string formatter function that I want. Ha, okay, no, I've got an idea now. Okay, is this how you do it? What if we change the string formatter function to now the string formatter function with the div on it? I think that's it. I think we got it. Okay, so this is our return function. No, this is our return div, but it has a string formatter function. So the tricky part here is that we need this to be able to be a string, and we need it to be able to, a function. So it's something that you can call, and it needs to be an object with the properties of this on it, but with the string formatter function modified. The only way I can think to do is like to get all the properties of this and loop through them and attach them to this new object that we've created with this function here. And so when you call this, it would be the correct one. Is there not another way to do it? Like if you look here, Object.create, they're not passing anything in. And even down here, you can create a properties object, an object whose enumerable own properties, that is those defined upon itself, and not enumerable properties. Specify descriptors to be added, blah, blah, blah. Like I don't care. The only way for this here to work is if we return back from any of these, the string formatter function that returns back from the string formatter. We need to return this. That's the only way for them to work. Okay, what's define properties? Yeah, so this is like Object.assign. What's different? Is this because they have this state in it? Whoa, something's weird here. Object 1, okay, you're assigning it property 1, but property 1 itself is an object. But it's not. Property 1 is value 42 and then writable. How did they do that? What? That's not, so this can't work. The way I'm doing it, this won't work because I got to return, like value is this. And writable, like I don't even know what that is. So you're going to tell me what these are? Configurable? Dude, this is, yeah, this is okay. True if, and only if the value associated with the property may be changed with an assignment operator. Yeah, oh, I see. Yeah, I don't want it to be, so this is like Object.freeze if you set this to false. And a getter and setter. Yeah. Okay. This makes sense now. I already understood the formatting of how you write these. But what I don't understand is how you can call this as a function. So if we're creating an object and it's already newed up, you cannot call it as a function. If it has like I thought you can call a class and it calls a constructor somehow, or it calls a function on a class or an object. Is it get? Is there like a function get can write? Just get. I'm going to put it on here and then be putting in. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to return this here. And I'll deal with the rest of this information later. I just want to make sure it doesn't error. 2 return statements. Okay. So I don't want the H1 part. I just want the div part. And I want to be able to see if I call it, do I get back? No. It's not a function. How do I make this a function? The only way I can think to make it a function is to take the prototype of this and set it equal to a function. Like this dot prototype equals function dot prototype. Aha. Now I got something weird back. But I know you can do something like this. I know this is a possibility. I don't know why it's logging it. These things shouldn't be there. Can I attach? First things first, this is probably broken and it's hard to read. There's not much I can do about it. We're out of window space here. Oh, there's plenty I can do about it. There. Who even cares about that file? Problem solved. I'll worry about the formatting later. Okay. So, I was hoping somebody could like chime in and be like, oh, you just need to do this thing. And it's like, oh, okay, that's what you do. This isn't going to work. This should be an object. There's got to be a way to create an object that when you call it without a new, it does something. It's callable. HomeProperty.call. Because we're not newing this up. Like we've created format as and these are like static methods. Do I have to do static? Static won't work because it's not a class. There's a way to do this. There is a way to do this. Just got to figure it out. How do I make one thing a function? Like how is a function executed as a function? A function is just an object. If you look at the prototype, it should be object, or maybe it's function. I thought functions are just objects. Yeah, see, no, they're defining a getter for B. Pretty sure that's what that is. Yeah, they're defining B and putting a getter on it. Oh, okay, I'm seeing what's going on here. So can I like create like no property and say The value is, I don't know, this is a get function here, and the get function returns this. Can return value. I think it's going to complain. So instead of returning this, I want a return function. No. What a crazy thing to do. There's some information I'm missing, and I'm not looking it up on purpose. I'm trying to solve it myself. It might be quicker just to look it up because it's late now, and I want to finish this. Oh, man. So I don't want to create object. I want to create function. Is that a thing? Like function.create? Does this exist? Let's find out. I don't think it does. Yeah, it's not a function. How do you create a function then and give it a special prototype? I can change the prototype of a function, easy. We did it earlier with underscore proto. If we do it with prototype, I think the way you do it with prototype is different. Let's do it with prototype and I'll worry about this stuff later. Okay, because we know this is not what I want. It's this, but we want to create, so we do want the return function. We want the return function to be this for now. Okay, so it's const return function is this, and we want to assign to the prototype of return function the prototype of this, which is not going to work at all because this dot prototype is a null object. It doesn't have anything on it. Maybe it does. Maybe it does. It's just not logging them. No, I don't think it has anything. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. Okay, this did execute, but I don't care about the execution now. I care about what's on div. What about h1? Ooh, prototype is undefined. Also undefined. No, I want h1 to be a function. Okay, h1 is returning this right now. We're returning like a more complex thing, but we're not returning this h1 function, which is what I want to return. We did on proto and it worked fine. How do you do this without proto? They're like, use object.create, problem solved. It's not solved. It is absolutely not solved. So I can create an object off of this function and I can give it properties. Yeah, I think what I'm going to have to do is take everything off of this and then create it as a property. There's no other way to do it. So object.entries, can this work? Oh, no, it does not like this at all. Not even a little bit. Can you get the properties of an object? Get properties of objects. There's a way it's like you're enumerating the properties. Yeah, get own property names. It's something like this. I think that's what I need, but I want to get the entries. Is there like a special syntax that they added to ES6? Because object.keys, if it is the exact same, that is completely different. Because it was infinite looping here. I don't think it was doing that before. Keys works. Entries doesn't? Why? I thought the entries is just keys and values. What if I do values? Does that kill it? Yeah, that's the problem. Okay, fine. I'll do keys. Just fine. The keys are the tag names, though. Technically, if I reveal these, I don't need this at all. I just need to call them on this. Or not call them, but reference them from here. So let's go back to this. I'm going to create an object off of the return function, which is this now. And so I have to create this as... what is this? Next string formatter. This isn't a string formatter anyway. This is a string formatter creator. So this is like a create string formatter. That's really what it is. And then what we're doing is this is not the next string formatter. This is the string formatter. This is a string formatter that we have created off of that function by passing in div. And then we want to create an object off of string formatter that includes every tag on this as a function, and then the create string formatter tag. I could just do dot whatever equals. Like I can mutate this, but I don't want to mutate it. I can mutate it with object create, but I don't want to mutate it myself. And so the value would be string formatter. It would be this.create string formatter with, it would be this one. It would just be this, but it needs to be bind this. Or bind this, which I guess doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out when we get there. And I need an h1 function on it right now. So just for our testing, I will add an h1. And I want the h1 to be this.h1. Sure hope that works. That's not going to work. This has to be an object with a value. I don't know if we can just pass it in like that, like we just did. First, let's do it like this and see if we can get it to work. And then we'll worry about that other one. So we don't want this. None of this. None of that stuff with this and all that crap. We just want to return it. So that means we should be able to call div. And we should be able to get the h1 property off of it, which we can. Okay. Tags is still unused. It's fine. And then this should work right here. Hello world. But the double rep, come on. Why is this not working? H1 is calling this dot whatever. And this the this context is from the this here. So we need to like bind string formatter. No, create string formatter. The H1 works. Why does this not work? Let's try this real quick. I want to see if I need that value thing. I prefer not to have to put it in. Okay, I do need it. You need to do something weird like that. Let's look at the, what was it called? It was an object create, but it was like Object.defineProperties. Yes. I don't want anything. Yeah, I don't mind if it's enumerable because I want to be able to debug. I think we need the value. And there's like a get and set. This really confuses me. It's a getter for the property. Okay, so it would be a getter function for this. If you go to this, so instead of a value, it could be a getter function for H1 that then calls this. But it's calling this dot whatever. I want this on the string formatter. I want it to call the string formatter for H1. So it says this dot create string formatter. I want it to create this one with that value. What is this? Oh, okay. Like that. Are you kidding me? I know it's not defined. It's defined right here. String formatter doesn't have this crap on it. I want to bind it to this. Do I have to first create it and then call this on it? That's what I wonder now. If I have to do that. And I don't know if this gets mutated when we do object create or it returns a value. Does it return anything? Return a new object with a specified prototype object and properties. And this one, does it have a return value? The object that was passed in. Okay, so this one mutates, which makes me wonder if I could just do this once we've created it. So it says it doesn't exist here, right? Because we haven't created it. But once we have created it, will it let me do that now to bind it to this? What's the issue? So basically we're creating an object with this, but we have to create the object for this to be bound to this. No, it's not working. It's not working. We're just binding to this, which should have that on it. Let me see. Is this like something where it can tell me what it is? No. Undefined function. This is a function. Yes. Not defined. I don't understand how to pass these properties in here. So this says Object.defineProperties, right? Which is what we did up here in the object create. All I want to do is make it so when it calls this dot create string formatter, the function that it has that was here is now a different function to call. It will call this function. Let's see. Right now we're giving it the string formatter, which is going to cause it to error because it's going to pass H1 in, and then we're going to pass in a string. So that's not going to work at all. But I still want to make sure we get this to be a value. I want to wrap the create string formatter function on the output. See, the problem is this thing. I want this to be wrapped in another one. So it's like this, you call that, and then you call this like that. So the first one would be div. And when you call the function of div, it passes this into it from H1. That's what I want. So I need to wrap this value in it. There's got to be another way to do it where you don't have to define it this way. But let's, for now, try to do it that way. So I was trying to modify what this create string format function would do. So when H1 called it, it was pre-wrapped, which is maybe like the final solution. But right now, I don't know what that is going to be. So what I need to do is essentially the value of H1 is going to be this function. Let's see. The value of H1 is going to be this function calling this dot H1 with the value passed in, and we don't have a value here. We're going to have to do like that. That's what it's going to do when you get the H1 property. Okay, so it works, right? This works, but it is not the solution I want. But I still want this to do the exact same thing. I basically want to chain these. So this cannot change what it does. I just have to wrap them in each other. If you call this, I can call this myself, but I want to wrap it. How do I do that? How do I say when H1 calls this dot create string formatter, it calls my this dot create string formatter blah, 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 blah. Because we're calling this dot H1 here. And if we bind it to a this, then I thought it would bind it to whatever, like this, when this runs, this part. No, we're binding this one. This would bind it to a different this. So then when it gets called, and it looks for the this it's looking for would be the one that we modified this function. So let's go ahead and create this real quick again, just one more time. The value of it is a function that takes the string formatter and then calls this whatever. So it's a function that will call this and that will wrap it in this dot create string format for any given value. The, what do you call it? The element, HTML element name. It's doubling up on logic. String formatter. Yeah, this is what we want. I just feel like we're doubling up. There's no reason to do it this way. And this returns a function that takes a value here. And just because I'm confused about this getter setter thing and this object create and how all this stuff works with the prototype and the this and all that stuff, it makes sense when you're doing something custom like this. It makes sense you have to worry about this. I just don't understand enough off the top of my head without looking it up. I have to spend time looking it up, and I don't want to. This is supposed to be a challenge where I do it tonight. Who would have known, like me going to this website here, that there would be something like ridiculously hard? This is only 5Q. Dude, this is really hard. And maybe if I knew the solution, it would be 10 times as easy. But I basically need to return. The problem we're having, that I've been having, is that when we return this function, that's great, but we also need to return this. So all the properties of this have to be on this this function. I could do that really easily by mutating it, but I don't want to mutate it. I would like to do it correctly with something like this. I also need to make sure that when this gets called on the next one, it's wrapped like this. But I don't want to double up on logic. I want to basically just give it this function, and then when this gets called, it has like access to this or something. So like it would wrap itself in this. There's some other ways I can do it with state. And like I basically say this dot string formatter equals a function that returns a value. That's all it does. And then I can mutate this dot string formatter so that when this calls it will always be wrapped in this dot string formatter. All of them will be wrapped in it. And so if I mutate this dot string formatter, then as you keep going, it'll always have the latest value. That's just really confusing to read. And it's probably the easiest way I can do it than having to do this everywhere. But this is more explicit. It's basically saying when we create a new object here, we're creating all the properties of this onto these object properties, and we are wrapping those in a function that returns the value. I almost feel like this is simpler though, because you're thinking right now that I have to define this a bunch. I don't have to define this a bunch. I can create these getters dynamically with Object.defineProperties, actually. I think this is the one, or somewhere else. Let me make sure. So Object.create. Well, so these properties can be these getters can be put on dynamically. You can like define values and then have them put in there, but to loop them, you need to be able to I thought it was define properties. Okay, let's take a look at this real quick. I thought there was something where you call define properties, you guys would be in it. Maybe it's something else that we've looked at. It was something with the letter B. It had an O and then a letter B, like this. Okay. It's weird because we can solve it with Object.proto with the underscores, but that's not going to get us exactly what we want. Let's see. Create function with object properties. And I could just mutate it. Is there a problem with mutating it? They won't have the right this context, but I could find every single one. And technically they're going to have to be bound anyway because I have to call them myself. This is not what I want. I feel like this is very basic stuff and none of it's what I want. Oh man. Is this where you get the B thing and the O? Yeah. It looks like, no, this is not it. There's an arrow. Where's that magic function I saw? It took B as a string. I was like, define property. Okay, so I don't know. Define properties. Oh, here it is. Hey, here it is. Okay, so it's what we're doing. Let's do this. We can create a new object, and we can create the properties list, and then we can add it onto it. Because we can loop, we can do object.keys. Like I was saying, though, we don't have to do object.keys because we know the properties we care of this. It's these tags. So it'd be the tags here. And we'd be tags, we loop through every single one, and we would reduce them into an object that is in the format that we care about. I feel like I'm working against myself tonight too. Like I'm trying to finish this challenge that I created for myself, and I'm getting sleepy, and it's becoming harder and harder to solve the problem. So combined, and this is our value, or in this case, a tag. I would rename these, not tags. It's HTML tag names. Yeah, that's making more sense. This is the HTML tag name, and these are the functions, getter functions. Okay. I want to know if this will work. I really do. Okay. This is not highlighting. Do I need a value here? No. We'll find out if it works. So this is a HTML tag name would be the getter function name. And then in the getter function, it would be, each one would be wrapped in a string formatter that calls this dot create string formatter with the HTML tag name. Okay, we're getting somewhere. I just wanted to avoid this the whole time, but I guess I have to do this. I think that's it right there. Reduce, get this. That'll create a new object, which each of these is getter functions, which is what we want. But whoa, okay, we can't do that. We have to define them like this, like we're doing here. So we have to give it a value. This is the value part. I don't know if I can, we'll find out if this is going to make any sense. Value would be this. No, this is fine. And then there's a getter on it, a get function. So if you call the get, then it executes it. Why do we even care? Because we do want to call this again. We want to call this thing again if you hit the getter. Almost feel like this needs to be moved up here. And this reduces into what's called format. Because this needs to call this as a function again. Does this need to be a function? And the functions that they're defining, they're doing it like this. Because you should have access to the right, return this. So we're back to the same problem here is I don't want to return this. I want to return a function, which is a string formatter with this as the properties. So I'd want to return string formatter that has been formatted with this. So we don't even have string formatter at this point. I don't think this is going to work the way we expect. Maybe I'll move it back down for now and we'll fix it later. So we created string formatter here. Our return function is, this will be a function and the properties will be of what we're doing. Okay, I forgot, but now I remember. So get rid of all this. It is string formatter and these are the properties. Let's put this as a second arg like that so I can tell it's the second arg. HTML tag names, reduce, getter functions. Each one will also have a get on it because we still need to be able to chain them. And I think for the get, we can call this dot and then the tag name. And that will get us the getter function that does all this stuff. So if you call it, you get this. Otherwise, you have the getter function that gets executed. And it calls this, it's not calling it. It's returning back tag name on this, which that calls this function, but it doesn't call the wrapped version of it. Do we want to do that ourselves? Do we even need a value piece if we've got the getter on it? Because getters return stuff. What if we returned a function here on the get? No. I want get to return this, but I also want to return to this, which is what we're doing here. Wow, this is like insane. What am I doing wrong? Well, let's figure out what happens here. Dial me. Invalid property descriptor cannot both specify accessors and a value or write attribute. Okay, so you can't have a getter and a value. That makes sense. I'm going to have to fix this in a second. Okay, yeah, it's still broken. Why? Is it like infinite looping somehow? So we're returning the thing that it would have already been. But we want to return the thing it's already been, but with a wrapped piece to it, just like we did earlier. So I don't know if we want value though. Like whatever it would have done here, we're going to wrap it in string, whatever. And we're going to take a value and the value. So I don't know what the value would be. So we would just return this. That doesn't make sense though, because that returns string formatter. I almost need it like this, that we call their function and pass our function in and return our function back. Maybe we should try to generate this object out here, but I just want to create it. Like we got it working once. We got it working in one specific use case, but it's not every use case. We can generate all these get functions for sure. And each get function will return. Okay, let's try something different. Let's go back to basics here. Let's create our format function. Okay. So format is going to be equal to this. It's equal to an object, which I really don't care what it is. And then we're going to define properties on that object. And the properties will be a bunch of getters and all this stuff. And then we will also have a function on this doesn't even work. That's all that is. Okay. This I want on there 100%. Everything else is up in the air, but I definitely want this on the object. So the initial object that it gets will have this on it. Okay. Why do we even do it here? Why don't we just say the object is right here? Let's do that, get that out of the way. These are our object properties. We can actually move this out. So it's up here. Format properties, yeah. Okay, so when we're running through this, they'll all be getters. All but this one that we defined on the initial object. So then each getter function will call, when it executes, it will return something, and it will return this, just like we did before, this dot whatever, and then the initial value that we give to it will be the HTML tag name, and we have a new format object, and we can try it out now. I just want to try that. Undefined. What is in format? Maybe object.create this? Maybe that would work. Yeah. Good. That's why I expect it to have nothing because they're all on the prototype, so it doesn't reveal them to us. So that's how that should work. Undefined. Div is undefined. Is it? No. It is undefined. Okay. So we're trying to replicate what we had before, and we can't even do that. We're saying it's a getter function. See how they did it in their example. So when you're doing define properties, you give it an object. In our case, the object is the initial object. We're defining a property on it. We call the HTML tag name. We're defining an object for the HTML tag name with a get, and it is a function that returns a value. And in this case, it's saying that value is undefined. So we created, div is in here, right? Yeah, div. We are looping through each one. I wonder if it even did this. I wonder if this even exists. We need a log to make sure we're even in here. We should be, but something could be going wrong. Yeah, we are definitely in here. Div doesn't exist, h1 exists. There we go. Okay, that's fixed. Cool. So now we can do format.div, and we can do, it's a function, but it is not a function with properties, right? Yeah. So now we need to add properties to the function. So this is a function that we have created. So this is going to be called the string formatter. This is like very familiar to what we were just doing. And when we return, I want to return that execution again. And I don't want to do it infinite. I don't want to keep doing it, but that's the only way I can think to do it, is where you do it like that. And we could modify this. Instead of const, we could do this. I mean, why not? So we can put a string formatter function on it. So we have a create, right? We could put a string formatter. And the string formatter function could literally just be, I don't have this context here. This one doesn't need it either, technically. It can get an input and just output the input. So we get a value and we output it. There. So that's the default behavior. So now we can always do this and then wrap it in our get function. So we don't even have to do this part where we're doing string formatter equals that. We would do this dot string formatter equals, can I do it after I return it? No. So I need to return a function. We need to create the function first. This is the function we're normally returning. Okay, we're back to almost where we started. Okay. So we create the return function. We update this string formatter to be our return function. And then I want to return an object with all of the stuff on it. But this is not a function to create it. If this was a function to create these, I could do this. Pretty easy. I don't want to call the string formatter either. I want to return it. But I also want to be able to call .h1. There's some way in JavaScript to assign properties to an object, and I can do that with a loop. But we're already doing that, and I don't want to do it again. We're doing it here. We're creating an initial object, and we're creating this format properties thing that I probably need to call over and over again to make it work. So basically we get this return function, and you would assign properties to the return function by calling this, if this was a function, to recreate those properties the same way we created them in the first place. Okay. So create format, create properties. Let's just call it that. Very generic. But we're calling initial object. So we just create, bam, create properties. This is now a function. It takes no args. Technically we could pass this in, but they're right there. I don't care. Create properties. Okay. Object.create. And it's the initial object. I don't know if this is going to work. We'll see. We have to make it, we have to return this essentially. And then we call create properties. I don't think this is going to work because initial object needs to be modified. We need to modify the string formatter on it, but we'll figure it out. So we have a return function. We want the initial object to be the return function now with those properties on it. We want it to be a return function with these initial properties on it. I wonder if there's another way to do this. We would have to put it down here. But I want to override this value. Okay. What if that was the object we started with? So that's in the getter functions. It's not technically getter functions at that point because it has extra stuff in it. This could return an object, and this could dot out. Object.create, return function. If we do initial function here, or initial object, if we put that here, it is not going to return us what we expect because we want to return an object, with those properties on it, these properties, but these properties need to be more. There needs to be more here. These properties need to have a custom. So this makes it a function now. Format itself is not a function. That's why we can do that. This is a function. And this function does not have all of the properties of this, but I wonder if I could it'd be cool if I could just this like that. I don't think this will work. Can I do that? It didn't work earlier. It's like not do anything crazy. I want to return this. It won't wrap them at the moment, but I want to just see if it'll work. It does not. Okay. Oh, whoa. That did not error. But it didn't work. It didn't work. We are logging H1? Yeah. H1 should be a function. So then we have to run this again, which is what I was expecting to do. We can dot that out. I just don't know if it's going to have the syntax on it if we do that. If we dot it like this. I almost feel like we need to call the Object.defineProperties or whatever. Let's do something weird here too. So each one will have a string formatter, right? And when we return from here, we can return the return function wrapped in a string formatter. We don't want to do that. We want to update this create string formatter object. So it does take the element name, but when it returns, it's wrapped in the string formatter. Okay. It's wrapped in this string formatter. And then we can update string formatter to have more stuff, to be more functions. I'm pretty sure this is the solution that I'm going to come up with here. I don't know if it's the solution. There's so many people that have solved this. I cannot imagine they've had this much trouble. Okay, the value of string formatter at this point in time is going to be equal to it needs to take a value and return a value. But in this case, it needs to take a value. Yes. Take a value and return this value. So when we call this function, does it need a return function? I want to wrap it in something. I want it to be this. And when I call it, it wraps it. Something is wrong here though, because I need to call it here. We're double wrapping it because we're doing this and that's our function. If you call it, it does this. If you call this, it wraps it in a string. Oh, whatever. Let's try. No, H1 is not a function. Okay, so the way to fix that is this. And we do Object.defineProperties or something like that, like we saw here. Oh my goodness. Yes. Object.define. So we're going to do this. And we're going to mutate our return function so that you can call it, but it now has more properties. And the property is going to be this. Oh, we need a return function. Maybe that's why it's not working. Maybe we didn't need to do all that stuff we just did. Undefined. Really? No way. We created this function and we added properties to it. This should have properties on it now. HTML tag name get. We give it a function. As of this context, we run all this code. What are these? Can I output them somewhere? Yes. That would be correct. Oh, no. Yeah, we don't have to do the value thing. We do the get. That's how it works. And it creates them on the object, which is return function. Okay, let's log return function and see what it has on it. Maybe it's not created correct. It should be just an object. Can we dot proto and sheet undefined? Very weird. Okay, return function does not have any properties on it. Even though we created those properties in the exact same way we created here, this doesn't mutate the object. Oh gosh, what a dummy. Right. This should make H1 have a value for now. Let's do that. Yes. Create string formatter is not a function because we don't have them bound to this. Each one of these getters has its own this. No, this is the this of the parent object, which is, no, it's the object we create with it. They should all be bound. When you do this, they should be bound to the correct this. Otherwise, it wouldn't work when we did it down here. Is it a function? It is a function. It does not output what I expect. Interesting. Okay, let's start with this example. So this returns us a function. Div, it returns us a function, and our function has none of the original properties on it. We do need these properties on our function. Okay, so I wonder, we're going to go back to this and hope it works. I don't have any real understanding if this is going to work. initial object. So we can take those properties as well. See if that works. Now it's not a function. What? I mean, it's not a function. We just created it. Is it undefined? No, it is a function. It is a function. I don't know if you can do this. This is the return function that we have. And I think we're going to have to do some weird stuff. Let's name the string formatter. Okay. And then I'm going to create the off of the string formatter that's called return function, and we'll return that. I see I missed the equal sign. Okay. And we'll figure this piece out later. Let's see if that works. Number one, returns a function. Yes. And if you call it, it breaks. No, you're not really a function. You just say you're a function, but you're not. Yeah. Okay. So then what we need to do is do the create properties again. And we're going to do this define properties thing. And that will mutate our object, which I really don't want to do. And I will add on the initial object onto it because it doesn't have it right now. The return function was not created. It's a function that's a return value of something, but that return value is another function, which doesn't have anything on it. Otherwise, we'd probably have to go through this too. No, we could make it return it with this on it. We could do an object.create on the function we return that adds the formatter function, and does this. That's if you call it as a function. If you don't call it a function, it will hit this getter, and we also need to have a function that it returns. So I'd just rather do it here. Okay. So now we should have that function on us. So if I get rid of this, it works. It's not a function. What? If we do .div, it is a function. Whatever we return here should be a function. The return function is a function. It is nothing but a function. Yes. Is that not how this works? It's lowercase. True. It is an instance of function, but it is not a function. Okay. I want to make sure you guys understand this. The div function is a function, but not a function. So it is an instance of function, but it itself is not a function. I have to do something weird. Is this what I have to do again? What? Okay, what happens if I return string formatter? Is it a function? This string formatter is not a function. So it does call this. Yeah, this does work. We don't have this context at this point, so that wasn't going to work. Somebody could have pointed that out, but that would have been nice. I'll figure out this part later. So string formatter works, but return function does not. I wonder at what point it breaks. Is it here? So we're taking a function, we're adding these properties to it. That's all we're doing. Now it works. No, that's not right. That's right. What if we don't create an object? Okay, what if we just, I feel like there's absolutely no reason to do it because we can't mutate. Hey, come on. Can I do this? Not that. .proto. Can I just, with deprecated stuff? This is not an alternative that works. It said you can't have a getter and a function, a value. It says you can't have a getter and a value at the same time, which makes sense because the value would, it's an either or kind of thing. I don't think you can have a value for a getter. Now I'm really confused. I thought I errored earlier when we did that. So if we go from here and we have a, okay, returns fun. That is a value. If we say get a unexpected identifier, a has to be a function. Okay. So let's make a function. Get a, return yo, t.a. Yo, t.a. Type error is not a function. I think that's what we're running into right now. Something like this. So we're assigning a value to this is a get function. We're saying it returns another object that looks just like this one. What if it returns, I can't return this because then you can't call it. It's all of this is dependent on one thing that I'm messing up and I don't know what it is. Okay. Div would not be a function if we do this. Yeah. We could do this, but you can't do the div part. Okay. That worked. We got an object back for this. H1 should also be a function, but it is not. Okay. So if we do return function, it will, yes. This .create string formatter is not a function. Okay. Do I need to bind it to this? Does that even work? No. It's saying this dot whatever. Can I do something simple like this? And basically bind must be called on a function. That is a function. It was at some point a function. Okay, let's try something else. Is it this simple? No, it's not that simple. What does this do? It says that any functions in here, so I still need to define the properties, but then I can do this. I just don't know a way to do it. You have to loop through every property like we're already doing though. It's the exact same thing we're doing and add them onto it. Like a for each. If it's just a for each, maybe I could do it. Okay. So HTML tag names, it's like redundant for each HTML tag name, which is now we've got a double. We're in it and we're doing it. We have 2 HTML tag name references. Normally this wouldn't be accepted, but my rules aren't calling me out on it. Dot HTML tag name. Can I like do that? Is that gonna work? I feel like this is going to be a problem. This is gonna get called a lot too. I'm really curious if it works. No, still doesn't work. There's literally one thing I'm missing and I can't find out what it is. I need to know more about this get. Okay, how about this? Yeah. Come on, object getters. Yeah, back here. Okay, this is the article we were in, where we were saying the B thing, I think. Yeah, here it is. Oh, now I found it. Finding a getter on an existing objects that use define property. Okay, we did this. That's what we're doing here. This is returning this.a plus 1. I actually want to return this, but if you're calling it, I want to return the function instead. Smart self-overriding lazy getters. What? We define a property. They do not calculate the property's value until it's accessed. Yeah. A getter defers the cost of calculating the value until the value is needed. It is never needed. You never pay the cost. That's how anything works. Like it's a function. An additional optimization technique to lazify or delay is to cache it. Okay, this is not what we care about right now. I don't care about deleting. Defining a getter on new objects. Okay, we do want this. Oh, no, we already did this. We're going to do it on existing objects. They're saying use define property. So instead of creating a new object with it, they're basically saying instead of doing this, what you should do is we have an object now, and we should do define properties like this on our string formatter. I feel like this is going to break everything because this hasn't worked so far. Okay, and then I want to do another one where we define the create properties. Still undefined. We can log this. Interesting. This .create string formatter is not a function. At this point in time, we have not bound this. Is that what breaks it? Is the bind this? Because we need to, okay, I've got an idea. I think it needs to be bound because of the way we wrote this. I don't know why it's formatted this way. I thought we fixed this already. But because this doesn't need this value, but our string formatter comes back with that one. However, it's erroring now. Is it erroring here or is it erroring down here? So do we just do, because this is weird, it's calling it. This is the problem. Okay, hang on. It's saying that create whatever format or whatever. Okay, so the first logs twice for some reason. The first time it runs, this is an object, okay? And then this .create string formatter is a function, yeah? And then the next time it runs, this is a function, which is our string formatter. And this .create string formatter is undefined, even though we added it here. No, we did not add it. We did not add it. We have to add it, which is what I was doing here. Okay, so it's create string format. We haven't added it yet. It's whatever that was on the initial object. It's that because it's not part of our loop here. And so it wouldn't be a part of create properties, but we do need to add it as a return property. What's a better way to do this? Because I'm not aware this exists. If our loop includes that as part of the object, then as part of getters, it would exist. So I wonder if I even wanted to put it here. This returns getter functions that goes on the object. When you do create properties, it would have it on there. Okay, we'll just put it here, fine. It's the thing I didn't want to do originally. So it's create string formatter. No. And then we don't need this. Okay, I'll fix it. The initial object is just going to be an object. And then initial object is initial properties. And we're going to take those properties and we are going to put them in here. Okay. And this is going to return a value prop. That is this function. Okay, I should put that column in there. Yeah. Okay, infinite loop. We're getting somewhere. They said that the getters were lazy, that it doesn't execute this function until you've added it. Are we doing something here weird? So we're calling this in itself and we're logging this here, but I'm not doing anything with it. I'm just logging it. I wonder if that's a problem. Yeah, that was the issue, is to bind this. So we're not done yet. We're not done yet. I am not doing the code correctly. So the problem is that I have these initial properties here. I thought I was being smart. We could still do it, but the thing is, like, when it calls create properties here and it will generate all these, I actually need to be a little bit smarter about when it creates the create string formatter function, because I need to wrap the output of it. So basically create string formatter creates a function that returns a function, and the returned function needs to be wrapped in my stuff. So it has the HTML element names. That's what it gets called with. And then this function that gets returned needs to be wrapped in the previous ones. Yeah. So if they call it, it calls this string formatter. I want them to call a string formatter that's been wrapped. I'm so lost now. It's so weird because I'm like very close. I'm pretty sure it has to do with his initial properties here. Me trying to cheat and put them up here. Don't think I can do that. The idea of having the this.string formatter might still be valid, because if I do that, I don't understand it. I'm barely getting to the point that I'm at now. The hard part for me is figuring out how I can get this function to wrap the others. That should have been the difficult part of this in the first place. Not like building it all out like this and trying to figure out how this get function works and stuff, which is honestly where we've been. We did the get function, we did it really quick, but we didn't know how to return both an object and a function initially, which we do now. We're just doing this. We're mutating it, which I guess is fine. Definitely don't want to mutate in the future, but do what you do. Format itself is not a function, but every single thing it calls is a function. It will return. Let's go back to hello world. So we just get a little bit of a coding goodness here. I want to know what? I want to know how this function on the string formatter object that gets returned back, which is part of this initial properties actually. So it's actually at this level. So when we call this and initial properties get set, I want this to do something different. Let's think through this. Our function is calling this dot whatever. What if it calls, how do we wrap the output of this? Let's again look at what this would look like. So the first pass, this is like how React is doing stuff. Div, right? And then that doesn't take a second arg. It returns a function. And then that function would take this and pass in h1. And then that function would take a value. That's the problem. That's the problem here. What needs to happen is that this returns a function and this accepts a function and then calls it and then returns, and then that one returns a value that takes value. That's how we're supposed to do it. But we're wrapping them like this to get the output. So we need our div, which comes first, and then our h1 that comes next, and then this. And that's the problem I'm having, is I can't like wrap my head around this. If each one returned a curry function, which they are returning a curry function, that makes it easier. But what I would expect to do is like this h1, we call it and give it this part and put it in there. Here, like this. But we can't because it's a compose and not a pipe, I think. Yeah, composes go backwards. So we want to compose it. Can we like store these somewhere? And then we loop through them here and execute each one in order in a reduce function. So that's one way to do it, is with a reduce function. We could store them somewhere and then execute like that. But I don't want to. I think there's another way to do it. And everything I haven't wanted to do so far, I'd had to do. So that says anything about how good I am at this. Create string formatter. So let's say we did it the compose way, right? It would have to be an h1 that it is a function that returns a function that returns this, which is what we have, literally. Let's think this through. So if we want these to be separate functions like that, it's essentially what this is. They're just functions like this. I don't want to call them this way though. I want to call it where h1 does not take a value. It itself takes a div function. Okay. h1 takes a div function. That's how it works. And we'll return a function that takes a value. Okay. Div is a function that takes a function, and in this case, does not have any. So maybe we do something like this, where h1 would call the div function that we passed in and wrap it with the value. So that would look like this. And each one would do this up the chain. So instead of create string formatter, what we want is still the same thing, but instead of creating a function, we need to pass in a function that takes a value and executes. Okay, that looks very similar to this. So we pass the div in, and then that gives us this. That is now our function. So when h1 gets called, okay, in this case, h1 gets called, we pass it an HTML element name, and the HTML element name is the entire thing. It's a function. It's this function with the div wrapped around it. That doesn't help us. I like the idea of using an array and just pushing them into an array and then executing them in order with a reduce function. It does prevent, I think, the issue of stack overflows, pretty sure. Yesterday I felt like really good at this. I felt like I had figured out how to get a good thing going and I could do the stream and it'd be great. Today I feel like I'm totally lost because I got out of my element. The first thing I did was pretty good, but even yesterday I had something out of my element. So I want that. It returns a function that takes a value. Yes. And when that function executes, we execute a function that we got instead of adding this. But we do want this part too. So we need to execute a function we got like this around it. Does that make sense? So does this technically take two things? Is that how I should do it? So your function that it returns children is a function that was already called with this, and it returns and it takes a value. And this will render HTML as well. But if it's an h1 here, children actually has to wrap the whole thing in the case that we're using it. So then this whole thing gets wrapped in that. Okay. I don't know if I want to call it children, but it's not really children at this point. It's like parent, wrapper. And then this by default would have no value. So it would be value to value. Okay. Wow. I don't want to call this value though. It's a function that takes a value and returns a value. That's fine. It's fine, value. I just feel this is really confusing because this is value, that says value. It might not be clear. I think I like this better. So when you pass it in, you got to pass the previous one in and the current one. Okay. Okay. Or we pass the element in and then we pass the value, blah, 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 like this. Is that what we want? We are going to find out. So we call this, and that's our string formatter, but it's not. It is not. We want to call it again. And we want to pass in the previous string formatter, which doesn't exist. The first time through, it doesn't exist. The second time, it will. So we need to create like the first one. How do we create the first one? I don't want to like put value to value. Initial properties. Create string format. We could just give it 2 args. Why are we doing this? Okay. That name is better, but I'm still not sold on our execution here. Oh, wrong key. There we go. Okay. So we're going to give it two things. Formatter and this. And in fact, at this point, I want them named. So I'm going to take an object. And this is a function like right now, it's just this, right? If we have this, I want to pass it in. Otherwise, I want to pass in undefined. And how do we know if we have this? That's the big question right now. When we call create properties, I need to give that in. Oh my goodness. Is that it? Is that freaking it? Like this whole time? That was the problem. And so actually, this is where you default it. This does not need a default value because it expects one. It has to have one. We default it here. Did I do this right? No. And then we just pass it through. And so the next time it comes through, we need to define what this is in here. Ooh. I don't know if that's what I want. Do I say prototype? Proto. Is this the proto? If so, it's our cheap way around it. Let's see. It's not a prototype though. It's a properties. So it says create properties. We should name it properties. That would make sense. This is our string formatter that we're returning with these properties on it, which it says create properties is so generic. What properties? Create formatter, right? Because we're taking a format HTML string as an argument. Create formatter properties. Yes. Yes. Okay. Now we give, this is the function we want, is our current function that got. I want to pass it in there. Is this? Okay. I don't know if this is going to work. I just want to try it. I'm like so into trial and error at this point. Yeah, undefined. Okay, we're getting somewhere. HTML tag name. Why is it undefined? HTML element name. HTML tag name. What if I changed that? No way. Okay, we're going to tweak this some because I do not like the output at all. This output sucks. It should just concat into one line, really. I don't care. That's what their example says. And so we can do whatever their example wants by just concating our strings this way. Yes. Okay. Now I want to just copy paste this. I can't believe we did it. I feel so much better than I did before. Why are tags defined on format? Let's think. Why would they define tags on format? Because you can do this.tags, but we're like generating what format is. We're creating it from scratch a little differently. Something in this reusable that we can call itself with itself. And I could define them here. I don't want this.tags. I'm not going to call something to create itself. Yeah. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do what they want. So I'm just going to define these tags, p and span, in that order. Actually, I will alpha. It is that order. Okay. Expected foo got foobar. To equal foobar. That's interesting. So there was something I wanted to check before. Is that the way we're doing it, that we can get hello world 2, that this is not going to format the way the other one did? I don't think we have to worry about it. Yeah, this is working. Can we do weird stuff? Yes. Can we do... Paragraphs can't have H1. The paragraph can have a span. Okay, what is causing it to fail? So should wrap input with the correct element, right? Test passed. What is the test? What is... Okay. Format div works. Format div H1 works. Format div foo bar. Oh, I got to take multiple args? Where's our function? Okay. I have to copy it again. I'm not working in their editor. Not again. I learned that yesterday. Test. Okay. Rest parameter must be less formal. Can't have a comp after it. Okay, I'll use their editor. Fine. They win. They got me. Yay. Okay, I did it. Wow. This should not have taken this long. This 10 is probably going to be enormous if anybody watches this video. Yes. Woo. That was insanely hard. And I wonder how these other 10 people did it. I have an account with these people. If they have other solutions, I should be able to look at it. Yeah, I will submit my solution. It was that good. Yeah, I'm very satisfied with the kata. It's just hard as hell. Thanks for watching that video. I actually take this in another direction and use JavaScript proxies the next time I do it. And feel free to like and subscribe. I'd love to get any feedback you have in the YouTube comments. Or if you want to tweet me, that would be completely fine too. Thank you very much. Goodbye.